Coralogix custom dashboards enable insights on a scale that are unparalleled in almost all of the competition. The way to navigate to Coralogix custom dashboards in the UI is to hover over dashboard and down to custom dashboards here. This will take you to the custom dashboards view, in which you can view all of the existing dashboards you have, create a new dashboard or edit an existing dashboard that you've already got, as well as add variables and filters, change time ranges and much more. Over the course of this video, we're going to explore the various different widgets that are available in custom dashboards. We're going to talk about what makes custom dashboards unique and really powerful and really special. And also we're going to talk about cost structure. We'll address cost structure now because it's easy actually. Cost structure is free. You pay on Coralogix for ingestion and retention, and that's it. So if you make as many dashboards as you want, you will not be charged per dashboard, you will not be charged per dashboard usage, and any dashboard usage does not contribute to your overall unit quota. So you can use this as much as you want in as many different ways as you want, and it's absolutely fine. Our recommendation is that you really leverage custom dashboards because they are very powerful and they have some really special features. So for example, you can define multiple time series queries within a single graph, within a single widget, and this enables you to visualize completely disparate data in the exact same place. There's also some really nice details as well. So for example, if I hover over a specific graph here, you can see that it highlights different areas of the graph at the same point. And what this allows you to do is correlate really easily rather than trying to work out different graphs that may be on different levels in the dashboard. So those are just some of the ideas that make the thing really special. Of course, the other thing that makes custom dashboards really special is the easy integration to the rest of the platform. For example, the ability for one to define different alerts, define different values straight from the actual graph itself. So these are all metrics values. If I hover over here, I can see this particular log-based line chart. If I then go create an alert, I can define an alert straight from there. I can define the threshold. We'll get more into this later. But the point that I'm making is that this is deeply connected with the rest of the Coralogix platform. So the custom dashboard solution is really powerful if you wish to visualize complex things in a really simple, intuitive, and easy to work with UI. So next we're going to get into the different types of widgets that are available, what makes and the different kind of connections that you can make in the Coralogix platform between your custom dashboards and the rest of your system. First, let's explore the general UI in the custom dashboards interface in the Coralogix platform. Once again, to reach custom dashboards, hover over dashboard and go down to custom dashboards. From here you'll see a list on the left hand side of all of your available dashboards that you've already created, as well as further left here you'll see different options for actually adding to the highlighted dashboard. Let's create a new dashboard by clicking on the new dashboard button here. This will create a completely empty dashboard, and it will also automatically highlight the add widget section, which shows you all the different available widgets. We'll go into detail about what each of these widgets can provide later on in the video. There'll be a section for each one. But just know that when you click on add widgets, these are the different types of widgets that are available for you. At the top of the top right here, you can see that you can change the time range, so you can pick anywhere up to the last 90 days, or you can pick a custom time range between one time and another time. Alternatively, you can also add variables. So variables enable you to actually set different filters against your dashboard. All of this we'll get into slightly later on in the video. I'm just pointing out what the different buttons are right now. And of course the refresh dashboard, so you can actually refresh the data that you're visualizing. And because we're in a new dashboard here, you can see new dashboard and enter short description. I can call this whatever I want. And I can give a description as well, so something along the lines of now, adding a new widget to your dashboard is really easy. Let's say I pick a line chart. I click it, I drag it, and I'll see where it will land. You'll notice here that it's not changing much, and that's because there's only one place it can go in an empty dashboard. If I want to add more, it's really simple. I can just pick another one. You'll see the line appears here or below, or above, actually. So what I can do now is I can place it in relation. If I place it here, for example, it will make them both in the same row. I can move it and make it the line below, and they'll both fill up the available space. So it's really easy to do. It's very trivial to define new values. We'll stick to one widget for now just to keep things simple. When you're editing any widget, on the right hand side you'll see a name and a description. You can also see a source. So for each widget you'll see a source option of logs, metrics or spans. This is essentially which type of data do you wish to visualize. Bear in mind that you can add multiple queries to one widget. So if I add query here, I can pick this one and set the source to logs, and then I can go down to query 2 here and I can set the source to metrics. And I'll have two different queries, one running metrics, one running logs on the same dashboard here, on the same widget. This is really, really powerful when you have correlated measurements, but they're across logs and metrics. You don't have to have them in different graphs. You can superimpose them one on top of the other. Just give really, really powerful insights, and we'll talk more about that when we're exploring the line chart widget in one of the next sections. We'll actually show some really nice examples for multiple queries in the same widget. Every single widget that you define will have different options for color schemes. So color schemes enable you to select a collection of colors that most accurately reflect what's going on. So for example, you can have a classic one, you can have different cold colors and hot colors for different feelings of greens, reds, and blues. The idea being is that if those colors mean something significant to your organization, you can color code each widget, and the platform will automatically generate different shades of that color for the different time series that you have available. You can also see things like series per query. So if you have a query that returns like 100 different series and you don't want to visualize all of them, you can just limit that down. You can also set a custom name for each series. So you can see I have nothing set here. It's just the word count. I can set it to whatever I like, and it will automatically change query 2 there. And finally, you can set the unit. Almost all of the widgets support this. So it's just a way of saying, okay, for example, it's actually 1.00K. I could decide that actually represents gigabytes. I could decide that it represents a different value, and it will actually change the scale on the y-axis to show what those different units mean. So we've just kind of just a very, very brief, very simple overview of the UI. Finally, just down the bottom here, you can see I now have two queries. One of them is a log query, one of them is a metric query. So whenever you have a query or some sort of code to write about your widget, it will always be down at the bottom here. Some of the widgets you can actually edit within the widget, like the Markdown widget that we'll explore later, but universally you can expect your query window to be at the bottom of the screen there, nice and out the way but easy to access. And the whole point being is that we're not hiding the dashboard as you edit it, so you can edit and get it really perfect in real time rather than constantly having to move things about and jump in and out of editors and that kind of thing. So as a quick overview, we've looked at the dashboard list. We've looked at adding the widgets. We've shown how to actually add a widget into the UI. And finally, you can set filters. So filters enable you to actually filter the data that's appearing in the dashboard. You can set new filters if you want, and you can select them from logs, metrics, or spans, and you can highlight the different field there. Be mindful here that when you're defining the filters, the log filters will filter the log queries. The metric filters will filter the metric queries. So you can't define a metric filter and expect it to filter a metric query. Or a log query, for example. So they're bound by data type. So whenever you're defining these filters, just think about what data type it is that you're actually trying to filter on. But this is almost never a problem, so it's fine. And you have this nice little switch here. So the filter will be, this has to equal a certain value, or this has to not equal a certain value as well. So you can do the negative filtering as well as the positive filtering. So look, those are some of the really simple values here. You can also, all widgets support this kind of focus mode that will expand the widget, and the options here. So you can clone a widget, and for example, you can do this. Now I have two. This is really powerful if you intend to make different views of the same data. So if you have some logs and it's the same query, but you just intend to do slight tweaks for different dashboards, this is a really, really nice way of doing it. You just clone, and make tweaks rather than doing the same work over and over again. So each of the different dashboards will have different options when you click on this, so just be mindful. And of course, down here you can also right click on your specific series and see some options there as well. So that's a quick run through of the creating a new dashboard at a very, very high level, and where the different UI components are in the custom dashboard feature in the Coralogix platform. Let's dive into the line widget in the custom dashboarding solution in Coralogix. So I'm already on the new dashboard page. I have an empty dashboard here. I go to add widget. I can see line chart here. I can also see lots of other options. We'll explore each of these in turn. With a line chart, you simply drag this in, and you now have a line chart in your graph. You can see I've already set the time range to 90 days. You'll notice a few things here. So you see, first of all, that the natural query is logs. So there's only one query embedded in this widget. Its type is logs. You can see the source here. If I change that to metrics, that will change to metrics and spans. It will change to spans, and also you see different data. There's like a default query that happens every single time you select a source. In this case, it's essentially just all the spans are counted in this case. So we'll just use logs as a simple example. You also notice this partial data thing here. This is because I've queried the last 90 days, but my retention period is actually a little bit less than that. It's only a week, and you can see the query range is up to 8 days. So it's only showing me part of the data. So this would indicate that maybe nothing was going on. It's not necessarily true. It's that the retention is preventing me from getting any further. So if I select, I don't know, the last 12 hours, for example, that goes away because I've got data for the full time frame here. So that's just in case you do see that. So with line charts, as with all widget types, you can select different names and descriptions. And when you do that, you'll see that the tooltip updates there. So by selecting the description, you'll see that it'll actually add a nice little tooltip there. So think about that for the usability of your line widget. Now, when you're defining log-based line charts or any charts, you'll use the Lucene query syntax. So for example, you can query on any logs that have the HTTP request IP address field in there, for example. And you'll see that the counts differ now a little bit. So you can see that we now are querying for only the logs where the request IP address is present in them. So that's just a really simple way. However, if you switch to metrics, you'll notice it's no longer Lucene, it's PromQL. So we can select, for example, DB statement latency is quite a nice one. And you can see all of the different SQL queries or Redis queries and what they're relevant, what their respective times taken were. This is actually kind of cool. This is a span to metric that's generated from the spans we have around database queries. It's quite nice. So you can see a bunch of different queries here for Redis, and you can see Postgres, and I think there should be DynamoDB in there as well. You can filter, of course, you can focus on a specific element with using the legend on the right hand side. So if you use logs or spans, then you'll write your query in Lucene. If you use metrics, you'll write your query in PromQL. And as we said in the overview section, you'll always do it in the bottom section here. This is where you'll do all of your coding, your direct querying. On the right hand side here, you'll see you have a lot of different options now. So we'll go back to logs. Firstly, you can select a different aggregation. So right now we're just counting. You could take the min, the max, the average, and so on. Now, let's say, for example, you decide to do the min, you can't do the minimum of a load of logs because minimum is a numerical value. So you'll have to actually select a numerical field. There's lots and lots of different options there. I'll just take response status code, for example, and it's 200, which is makes sense. So of all the response status codes we've got, the lowest is 200. That's just one particular example of how you could do that. You could also choose different values around request rate or whatever if it's present on the logs. So you can choose different aggregations based on what you want to see here. We'll go back to count. Now, you can also group by different values as well. So for example, I could say, actually, I want to group by subsystem. And that will show me all the different subsystems. And this is actually quite a nice way of showing activity. If log count equals activity, then you can actually see the activity of each individual service is only a couple of clicks and no need to write any Lucene whatsoever. It's really nice. So this is just a very nice way of visualizing all of that data. Of course, you can also select different data points. So you could have different highlight the granularity. So in this particular case, you can see every 3 hours, 4 hours, and so every 5 hours. And if you lower that, it will automatically select different values. Now, really, just leave it at auto. It will make your life a miles easier. It's just if you want to change the granularity, if you don't care about minute by minute or 5 minute by 5 minute granularity, then just set it to whatever you want. But the vast majority of people find that they can just leave it at auto and it'll work very well. Finally, advanced options. So we have different color schemes here. We have the classic. We can set it to severity. Severity colors. We can set it to cold or hot or green. For example, greens might be useful if you can use green to color code for a certain set of applications. You have different reds and blues. So again, just a really nice way of showing different color schemes. It's a good way of making consistent colors within your chart as well. That's a really important thing for usability and clarity and at a glance insight. So you can glance at the chart and see these colors all correlate with one another. Bunch of different options down here as well. You can select what appears in the legend. So I can say, for example, the min, the max, the sum, the average, the last, and so on. Now you'll notice before the aggregation type was count. Now what we're saying is, okay, what are the maximum counts? So that now we have the count, that's our numerical version of last, max, sum, and average. So where before you had to actually select a field in a log, these are the last, max, sum, and average of the count. So that's why you can do these ones without having to select a log field, but you can do it with the aggregation. Now, all of these are a single example, but we can add queries to the line chart as well. You can do this with almost any chart. With the line chart, what you can do is you can select, for example, we have a metric here now. So we have the overall application latency, and we can change the metric. So we'll say DB statement latency metric in there as well, just as an example. And now we can see that we've got one query here, the legend here, grouped by subsystem, and query 2 is grouped by statements. These are totally different data sets that we can superimpose on top of one another. Really, really, really nice actually, because it means that you're able to visualize these problems from multiple different angles. And if you want a nice example of where this is really great actually, we'll show you in a second one of the really nice use cases. We'll just finish off some of this so we can see we've done all the units and that kind of thing. You can also see that you've got different options here on general settings for showing labels, or for grouping by query and so on. You can see here that if we open up, let's say query 1 for example, we go to advanced, you can change the scale of the y-axis. So right now it's linear. If we set that to logarithmic, you'll be able to see that it turns into a logarithmic scale. Logarithmic scales are really powerful when you have very variant data. So some of it's really low and some of it's really high, and you want to be able to see the trends in all of them. However, at a glance, all this data looks relatively comparable, right? Because they're all kind of close to each other. Like these two, this one and this one could be considered quite close, but actually this one is 14,000, this one is 99,000. That's the problem with logarithmic charts, is it kind of kills your ability to view what's going on at a glance. And these ones here, this one's 81,000, this is 999,000. So the further up the graph you get, the more different the data becomes. So if you're going to set a logarithmic y-axis, just be aware that it may take some getting used to and some time getting comfortable with the actual platform before you decide to go with that option. One other thing that we're going to highlight here is if I just move out of this, you can see a bunch of really interesting stuff here. What I can do is I can actually, what I'll do is I'll just remove that second query as well, just because it's makes the graph very difficult to read. So now we can see we've got our graph here grouped by the subsystem. Now, if let's say we pick a sort of longer time frame, let's say 7 days, all sorts of stuff going on here. What I can do is I can say, okay, this is all the data that's coming from my high performance frequent search storage. If I click this button here, what's going to happen is it's going to reach into the customer's archive. Now, archives in Coralogix, as we've said in a previous video, are stored in cloud storage in the customer's account. And it's going to produce graphs from that archived data. And this is remarkable because what it means is that not only is your data sat in the archive, it's completely accessible. You can query it directly using our remote query functionality, and now you can visualize it in the dashboard as well. So this is remarkable. It's really powerful because it means you have this huge data set to work with, and it really just opens up what you can do with your archive data. So it's really quite special. So definitely investigate that if you're using this. So we looked at multiple queries before, and I just want to show you a nice example of where this might be really useful. So we have this other dashboard down here called database performance. Now, with the database performance widget, you can see up here that we have performance by query. It's based on spans and metrics. So I have spans that describe the 99th percentile of query latency. I have the medium percentile for these two queries. So one is Postgres and the other one is DynamoDB. However, at the same time, I'm also visualizing the database CPU usage of my Postgres database. And what that's going to do is it means that if I get a spike anywhere, if I get a sudden spike in latency here, I wonder if that maybe correlates with the spike in the data. So here, for example, you can see that there's a spike in Postgres CPU and at the same time, roughly a spike in latency as well. So just a really interesting thing to look into. But this is a really nice example of where completely different data sources, spans and metrics, just superimposed on top of one another, and you can actually get insights that will be difficult to ascertain in other ways, for example, in different widgets or indeed in different dashboards as well. These are just some of the examples that are available as part of the line chart widget. And I'll just show you one more really cool thing that you can do as well. So if we Go back, we create a new dashboard, or we'll discard the changes that we've made to that. We bring in the line chart. Now what we can do here is, with a line chart and with other charts as well, but this is just a really nice opportunity to show it, is you can actually create different things from this graph. So if I create an alert from this graph, I get this amazing UI that's going to show, okay, right at the top here is 90,000 count. Now, I don't want to have an alarm that's firing when all this is going on, because this is pretty much uninteresting, right? It's this spike that I'm really interested in. So what I can do is I can say, okay, 89,000. What that's going to do is it's only going to alarm when that gets really, really high. I might want to say, okay, maybe actually that's a bit too specific. We'll do 82,000. So right at the top, and look how clear it is when that alarm is going to fire. This is just a really, really cool example of where the Coralogix UI enables you to not only visualize things based on your dashboard, but also define new alarms based on your dashboard as well. And of course, you can click through this and you get the new alarm setting. It'll all be set automatically with the values that you selected as part of the UI. If you have a query, it will appear here. Any filters by application subsystem will appear here. And you also get like severities and things like that as well. It's really, really nice. So this is just one of the really cool use cases that you've got with the Coralogix custom dashboarding solution. It's not just about visualizing the data, it's about connecting it to the wider platform as well. So that was the line widget. Line widgets are probably the most commonly used widgets that we see in the custom dashboarding solution. Indeed, in almost anyone's dashboarding solution, line charts provide a really nice visualization into time series data. So that's a rundown of the line chart, what it can do, multiple queries, loading data from the archive directly in the UI as part of your dashboard, and defining new alarms. You can also define metrics from the dashboard that you created as well, which is really, really quite powerful. So hopefully that was useful, and in the next one we'll have a look at some more of the different widgets available. The next one will be about table widget. Let's explore the data table type in the Coralogix custom dashboarding solution. So once again, empty dashboard. If I hover over add widget here, I can go down to data table and drag that in. You see it's automatically populated in the logs view with a cat, which actually is just a list of events that have happened recently. So one thing to mention about the data table, it's very, very versatile, and so it's going to change dramatically depending on how you configure it and also which data source type you use. So if I select, I'm on logs right now, if I go to metrics, it's essentially a completely different table. It has this really nice values over time widget in there, and it also shows different aggregations, last, min, max, average, and sum, as well as a particular job that drove this particular metric. And if I go to spans, I'll see a different table again. I'll actually see the different actions, different durations and errors and so on. So, and I can even see things like HTTP status codes and gRPC responses. So really quite nice. Essentially, that's the thing to remember, is that the table is tailor-made towards the particular type of data that you're looking to visualize. As with all widgets, again, you can set the name and the description. And you can also, if we switch to the log view, for example, you can also select, okay, I'm in event view right now, which is just a list of different events. I can actually switch to aggregation view, and what this will do is it'll create, by default, it'll create a count. I can then open this up and select a different kind of aggregation if I want. For example, if I hit add, I can select any of these from sum, min, max, and average. When you do select this, however, you're going to have to pick a field to max. So it's going to be the max of a particular field within the log. So just keep that in mind when you're looking to define this this particular aggregation. Stick to the event view for now. You can also customize the number of columns that you have. So for example, you have timestamp, text, application subsystem. You can pick any of these. I'll pick one at random, AWS description, and apply that. And now I have this new column, and if any of the logs do have this field available, it will be automatically populated there as well. I can change the way that logs are viewed in the log view. So for example, I can go all the way to JSON mode, and I can see this really detailed view of the different JSON field logs, or the different logs in a JSON view. However, most people get the most benefit out of either condensed, if they're not big logs, or one line, if they are big logs. And then you can see just a brief summary of what's going on in those logs. And finally, if I change the results per page, I can kind of move from, rather than 100 page, I'll move to 1 to 50 and 50 to 100 and so on. So you can change the number of logs that appear on a given page, and that's a really nice way of just making sure that your data is, your dashboard is nice and clear and it's not cluttered with too much information. Now, I've talked a lot about the logs view here actually, and we've seen different modes and different ways of setting things. I'll just show you one more kind of cool thing. If I click on a particular field here, I can actually include that in the query. you'll notice that the query down here updates, and the dashboard is essentially now only visualizing logs from a particular front end. And that's really quite nice. What it means is that you're you don't have to write raw Lucene if you're not comfortable doing that. Now, for the metrics view, what you can do is a bunch of really nice things. Once again, you can manage the different columns that are available based on the fields that are available in the metrics. You can also set different values, once again, set the rows and so on. However, you can also set a filter to make sure that metrics aren't appearing. And so you can set a different query here. So, for example, if I set the DB statement latency to here, what this is going to do is it's going to actually visualize the different permutations that are available for that particular metric, and it's going to show me the different services and DBMSs and the source it came from, and it can actually visualize all the different label values for this particular metric. This is really nice, I think, because it means that I'm able to actually see all of the different states of my particular metric. It's really, really nice, and I can actually get a really good visualization of what's actually going on in the rest of the chart. So I can see here that we have an average. What's got the highest average is this DynamoDB query latency here. It's very, very high average latency. So these are just some really, really nice examples of what one can do with the table chart, with the ability to visualize the metrics. And remember, just as a quick of a recap, the chart changes a lot based on the different data type. So if you want to visualize logs, metrics, or spans, just remember that you're going to be seeing a different sort of type of data table there. As usual, this thing will respond to filters and to variables, and obviously the time range as well. So you can do that as well. It's just this is true of all widgets. So yeah, that's just a quick run through of the data table from a logs perspective, a spans perspective, and a metrics perspective. We deep dived into logs and metrics. Spans is very similar to those two, so it's covered by the information that we've seen there. So this just briefly covers the different powers of the data table, as well as its versatility, how bespoke it can be, and how important it is as an addition to any custom dashboard that you're going to build in Coralogix. Next, let's explore the gauge widget. So the widget is available on the left-hand side here, as usual. Just drag it in. Gauges, typically, you'll see a lot of blank space either side. What people typically do is they have multiple gauges next to one another, so you can kind of, if we just use the clone functionality to show this off, looks a bit more like this. This is more of a normal use case for your gauges. So you'll have like multiple of them on a single row, and they just give you like a really nice at-a-glance view. If you see anything that's red, you should be concerned, and so on. So it's really powerful for visualizing the state of a specific metric. This is usually things like CPU, memory, network latency, things that have like really defined concerning values. So if CPU gets to like 99%, you know something is wrong. So while the gauge visualization doesn't change much across the different data types, the configuration does. So for logs, you can select different aggregations like count, sum, min, max, average, and so on. You can also add a filter, so you can filter by specific logs if you want. And then you can set a min. So for example, we have a count of all logs going on right now, and it's 4.32 million. So if I select the max to be 5 million, we can see now that that's gone back a little bit because 4.32 million is less than 5 million. So we can see the space here. We can also see this outer arc here, green, yellow, and red. These represent the points at which the thresholds change. So you can see it's red right now because it's inside the red zone. So the way to set those thresholds is really simple. So green to yellow is 33%. That's the green part. Yellow to red is 33 to 66. That's the yellow part. And 66 and onwards is the red part. I think 66 is a bit unfair, so I'm going to set that to 90. When I do that, you see that the inner graph changes. And this is because we're now in the yellow zone. The actual metric is now in the yellow zone, and the red zone only takes up a small space here. So that's how that works. Now, if you're not really bothered about these sort of graphs above the top to show the percentage or anything like that, you can just change this. And what will happen is as the value changes, the color of the text will actually change. So if we check this back to 66, it goes red. And stays yellow if we set to 90%. So if you just don't really want to see those full things, you can do that. Alternatively, you can just delete all the thresholds entirely and it will just stay green the whole time as well. That's kind of up to you. But the magic of this is that you're able to really very, very flexible and very configurable widget. So that's the functionality for logs. Of course, it supports metrics and spans as well. So for metrics, it's slightly different. You have different fields available here. So what we're going to do is we'll just select a different metric. So for example, if I take the average DB statement latency, for example, I pull that in. We now have 4.38k, and I can set the inner arc and the outer arc, and I can add some more thresholds back in again. I'll set that to yellow and that one to red, and I'll make this actually a little bit harder. So the max is set to 5 million from before. Let's say that's a 5,000, for example. So we can see once again that 5,000 milliseconds is very, very slow. And so that's actually a bit of a concern. So a 5-second response time is really not acceptable. Really quite nice. And we can actually do this. And we can see now we can actually set the units, and that will visualize that as seconds. Again, the thing to highlight here, really powerful at a glance. Okay, you can just look at this and understand it really cleanly. The last thing to discuss here is the calculation field. The calculation field has a number of different options. So you can select the minimum value, the maximum value. You'll notice you don't have to select any fields like the logs, because metrics are automatically numerical. These calculations can be done straight away. So you can see the sum and the instant value and so on and so forth. So this is just a really nice way of calculating what's going on. Finally, the instant value. This will give you like the most up-to-date reading of your metric, if you like. And if you want to understand more about this calculation field, there's this really nice tooltip, as well as a breakdown and documentation right here. So there's lots of different ways to slice and visualize your data. This is essentially deciding how you're going to sample your metric for a particular reason. So we've looked at logs and metrics. We should look at spans finally. Now, spans has basically very, very similar to logs, but with one extra detail. This is all based on latency here, but we can see here we may only want to visualize just errors. So if we do that, we can see that the actual value changes quite substantially. Essentially, that will filter out any span without an error. And so if you just want to view the impact of errors, that's one really nice way of doing it. Thresholds work the same, units work the same, mins and maxes work the same, aggregations and things like that work the same as well. So if you select a different minimum, for example, you can actually select just the duration field and so on. So that's just a breakdown of the gauge widget and the different fields that are available within it. The gauge widget is really nice, actually. It's really very powerful for visualizing specific metrics. Once again, if you're not interested in this whole gauge visualization at the top, you can turn it into a single metric widget as well. So just want to highlight that one more time. So it's essentially two widgets baked into one here. So this is really, really nice and really important for those high level but super, super important key metrics that have to be healthy at all times, and you want to see a big red line if they aren't. The pie chart is another widget that's available in the custom dashboarding solution. So once again, open it up, go to pie chart and drag it in. Pie charts are really powerful for visualizing the share of different things that different values have. Really great for visualizing, for example, data usage volumes, or so for example, you can see how much of your data usage is spans, metrics, and logs. Essentially, it's a grouping function to show you the different proportions compared to other values. So really, really powerful. You can see some really cool details already. So you've got this ability here to filter out different values from your pie chart. You get that really nice animation to show the pie chart changing. These are completely unique to the pie chart, by the way. So name, description, and so on. Pie charts are always grouped. So whether it's logs, metrics, or spans, they are always grouped in some way. So if we have logs, for example, I can group by whatever. There has to be some kind of grouping. I can pick computer, for example, and I can see it's grouped by server there. Now I'll get rid of group and put application there again. We have application, we can pick subsystem, we can pick whatever we want. Now, there's some really nice features here. For example, the count. As with other counts, as with other aggregations, sum, min, max, and average, you're going to have to select a field from a log in order to do these particular calculations. Also do count, distinct, and average. We'll just stick to count again to keep things simple. Now the pie chart has a nice feature, which is stacking. So what stacking allows you to do is to visualize, so for example, this is the front end share in green here. You can actually visualize another value share of front end. I'll give you an example. Let's take computer. So now I have a visualization of the front end application in green. I sit inside there and I can see 1.97 million logs, 47.34% of the entire pie chart. If I hover over this segment here, I'll see that of those front end logs, half of them, or like a quarter of the overall, has come from this particular server, and another just less than a quarter have come from here. And what this allows you to do is visualize the share of a share, essentially. Really, really powerful. And this works for all the different ones as well. So you can see here, for example, the ad service and then the actual server there. So this is really nice if, for example, you've got an application that's running across multiple different nodes and you want to make sure that traffic is being served equally from those 3 nodes. So you could have a visualize, you could first group by the actual application itself and then break down further by the servers as well. And that's a really, really nice, powerful feature that the pie chart offers there. So you can see here that you can also name your stack as well. So you could give it whatever you want. I'll call it server just to make the point. And then when you hover over here, you'll just see server, and so on. And you can actually input the value itself. So if I do this, like that, and I hover over here, you can see server and then the actual name of the computer as well. So it's templatable. Max slices per stack. So if I bring that down, has to be at least 2. I think in this particular visualization there's only 2, but let's say, for example, there were 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 servers, then I can limit that to only show the largest ones. So that's logs. You have some advanced functionality as well, max slices in chart, max percentage slices, min percentage slices display, and so on and so forth. So for example, you can see this other is 3.42. Now I could say actually only display if it's 4, and then the chart actually recalibrates itself so it's all grouped together. So that other gets bigger because different ones are being conglomerated together. You can set the unit, you can set the max slices per chart. You can actually say, okay, I only want to see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. You can show the label based on the group by the stack. So for example, if we have stack here, you can see that this is actually now the label for the stack, the actual server for that particular application, not the group by, which is the application itself. Bunch of different options here around showing legend and so on. So a bunch of different features there. Now with metrics, it's slightly different. So you'll notice stacking is still available and so on. However, you'll notice can't really drag anything in here. So what I can do is actually go down to here. I can see sum up by job. Now if I pick, for example, average DB statement latency, and then I'll go by, we'll do DBMS, a label I know exists. We can see the average statement latency for different DBMSs here. We can see the rest of them are kind of 7.75K, and DynamoDB is 128,000. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to visualize the metrics. So note here that the metrics here are actually really all about or what drive the dashboard here. So if you want to add a grouping, you would add a grouping in PromQL there. You can add stacking as well, of course. Finally, spans. Spans are very, very similar to logs in the way that they can be visualized. So you have spans here, you can see it even looks kind of the same. You have a count, you can stack by different values here. So for example, the HTTP host will show you the different values that are available there, and so on and so forth. So this is just really nice way of visualizing what you've got here. So this is the pie chart. So to recap quickly, the pie chart, like all of the widgets, logs, metrics, spans, you can group every single pie chart widget has to have a grouping. Those groupings are defined differently for logs in the UI, for metrics in the PromQL query, for spans it's in the UI as well. And pie charts have this really powerful stacking ability, which allows you to slice up each individual part of a pie chart to show a different share. And a really nice use case for that is applications deployed across multiple nodes, so you can see the share of, for example, logs coming from different nodes. And of course, colors can be set, units can be set, the number of minimum, maximum number of slices can be set, and so on. So it's just a really nice way of visualizing the most important parts of the pie chart functionality. Pie charts are actually really nice. They're a bit like gauges. They offer just a really powerful at-a-glance insight, and you kind of normalize on what a normal pie chart looks like. And so whenever you see something different, that alerts you that something maybe is wrong. So that's pie charts. And next, we're going to take a look at a more complicated widget, which is the bar chart. The bar chart is a staple of any graphing solution, so naturally, custom dashboard supports it as well. As usual, at the widget, you can see there's both a vertical and a horizontal bar chart, so one going up and one going across. So you can see here vertical and horizontal. We'll just work with the vertical today, but you can transfer everything we set onto the horizontal bar chart. Now, for the bar chart, as with all widgets, the sources can be set to logs, metrics, and spans. So you can see different options here, although it doesn't really change too much about the configuration itself, although there are some slight differences. Now, moving down, we can see that there's this x-axis option. So that's actually defining the grouping. So right now it's got a simple group by value. So it's by subsystem. You can see CX, CSPM, CX room, Coralogix alerts, checkout service, ad service, and so on. If I change that to time, what happens is I actually group by time buckets now. So 3 a.m., 5 a.m., 7 a.m., 9 a.m. And it accesses the next piece of functionality I want to discuss, which is stacking in bar charts. So what this allows you to do is allows you to break down a given bar by specific values. In this case, what's actually happened is it's almost like we've grouped by time or time buckets, and then we've stacked by subsystem. If we go back to value for a second, we can see that it's actually just grouped by subsystem with no stacking implemented. And if I want to, I can add stacking of any kind. So we'll add the computer stack like we had in the previous ones. We can see front end here has the two stacks. We can pick a different one if we want to pick something else. So severity, for example. We can see that most of the front end logs are debug, a vast majority are debug, with some error and some info. So just a really nice indication there of what of how stacking works and how one can work with this. Also, how the x-axis can be changed to work with either time or value. So have a think about what's really important here. A good litmus test is simple, okay? For example, do you care about the front-end logs for an application for this particular widget? Or do you care about the activity in your system at a given time, your entire system at a given time? If you do care about something like broader happening at a given time, the time-based x-axis might be useful for you. Otherwise, the value-based x-axis is really useful, really powerful, really easy, and really straightforward to use. And of course, you can do the same thing with metrics and with spans as well. So you group by subsystem here, and you can stack by, for example, I will say service, for example. It should all be the same because service is usually similar. Pick action, that's kind of cool. So now we're seeing the network activity of the front-end application broken down by which endpoints are hit most. So a really nice use case if you want to visualize which endpoints are being hit the most. In this case, it's the product categorization service that's being hit there. So really, really nice feature there. You can see the load generator, you can see the breakdowns there. So this is just actually a really good example of how one might use the stacking functionality for spans. Now, as we mentioned before, they can come in horizontal or vertical flavors. This is the vertical option because you can see the bars going up and down. Of course, you also have some advanced settings as well. So legend colors by group or by stack. So if you set by stack, you can just see that the colors will change. The color groupings will change based on whether it's the group, for example, front end is all these different shades of pink, or by stack. So now you can see blue here and blue here. So product category. And so it's coloring by the stack. Imagine like a slice across rather than a slice through. And of course, as with the previous options, you can set different color schemes as well for different values. You can set the max number of bars per graph as well. So if I set that to something less than we've got right now, like 5, you'll see it only shows 5. It defaults to 24. There's not many good reasons to change this, to be honest, unless you want to visualize the most important ones for whatever reason. That's kind of up to you. And you can set different group names. And you can also select different units if the value permits or is necessary. With metrics, the only thing to remind you of is grouping is done in the PromQL query down here. So if I, for example, go back to our DB statement latency, and I say we'll take the average of that, for example, like this. You can just see that the overall sort of latency performance there is metric, PostgreSQL, and Redis. And of course, stacking will work as well. So this can be done in a really, really powerful way. So essentially what we're going through here, just a quick recap, is the visualization of spans, metrics, and logs in the vertical bar chart. And this can be transferred over into the horizontal bar chart. We've covered setting the color schemes for consistent colors, and also coloring by either the stack or the bar, depending on what it is you're trying to visualize and trying to get across to your users. Yeah, so this is really, really nice. Once again, just to highlight the power of this color scheme selector. So the color scheme selector is really great because, so in my opinion, there are certain color coordinations that you can set to different types of applications and different values, and it really, really improves the sort of at a glance value of this kind of dashboard. So I would definitely recommend spend some time playing with the color coordination. It's just going to make for a more intuitive and immediately informative experience. It's these kinds of little details that we found that our customers really benefit from. So yeah, that's a quick recap of the vertical bar chart and obviously by extension the horizontal bar chart as well. Let's have a look at the Markdown widget. This is a simple widget but very, very powerful. So here we're pulling the Markdown widget from this section here. Now, in the Markdown widget, essentially you can write any Markdown you want. You can define tables, links, you can put images, quotes, checklists, normal lists, ordered lists. It's very, very powerful. Really great when you've got complex dashboards and you want to explain some things, or if you want to use this dashboard as kind of like a central place for one of your teams, you can have links off to runbooks or different parts of the Coralogix environment. So for example, I can set the heading mode here to be heading, and this is my title. And then I can type whatever I want. Now there's two ways to edit this widget. If I move myself out of the way here, you can edit in the what you see is what you get editor, the rich text editor up here, and you can set things like strike throughs and italics and bold and headings, and you can add lists and you can make numbered lists. You can even insert tables into this thing if you want. Or if you prefer to work with Markdown, down here you'll actually see a direct Markdown editor. So you can change the Markdown if you want. This is also really powerful. If you don't see a button for it in the rich text editor up here, you can just write the Markdown directly and that will work as well. So if you're not sure how to do something in the UI and maybe it's not quite implemented yet for whatever reason, then you can just edit the Markdown directly, which is really nice. And this is actually really useful for dashboards where we have use cases, complex dashboards where we want to link off to other areas of the platform, or we want to link off to runbooks, link off to documentation that teams can use. So for example, if they're looking at a database performance dashboard, they may say, okay, I want to add contact details for a particular user. So this is just it's probably the simplest of all the widgets because there's not much configuration. In addition, you can also add a tooltip as well. So you could say things like this is my tooltip, and if we go out of that now, you hover over it, you'll see this is my tooltip appear there. Again, it's just a way of adding like an extra level, an extra depth of information to that widget. It's going to make it really easy for you to work with. So if your dashboards are like one or two widgets, I wouldn't worry too much about this one. But if you have more complex dashboards, definitely I would recommend including the Markdown widget as a brief explanation of the dashboard, any variables that you've declared, any quirks of the dashboard. Does maybe the data is inconsistent from the scrape, or maybe it's only a 1 minute granularity for everything, or 2 minutes or 5 minutes. All these details you can put in the Markdown, and it's documentation that's baked right into the dashboard, so it won't go out of date either. So it's just a really nice addition to the custom dashboarding widget set. So now we've seen all of the different types of widgets available in the custom dashboard solution. Let's explore variables. So variables are a really nice way of essentially searching through the data that you want in your different widgets. They can be embedded into all types of widgets for all different data types, meaning a filter or a variable that's declared, or a variable, sorry, specifically that's declared from a log or a metric or a span can be used to filter other data types. So a log-driven variable can filter metric-driven widgets, no problem. So defining a new variable is really easy. There's this button here, and if you hover over it, it says add variable. When you click this, you'll see some options. So you can select from log field value, metric labels values, span field values, static values. Static values, of course, being values that you've actually decided yourself. Log field values come from the unique values of a field. So for example, if I select severity, I'll see the severities there, as one might expect. I can set the name of the variable as it will be used in the queries, like severity lowercase. I can also say like severity, maybe with capitalization, or maybe I'll give it another name just so. So now if I click save, what happens is that appears up here, and you see that severity label name actually appears as part of the variable itself. It defaults to all. Now, this isn't connected to any of the widgets yet, and I thought I would start with a pre-built dashboard just to show you how that works. So I have two widgets here, metrics and logs. This also works for spans as well, but spans just use Lucene, so the same way that you configure it with logs, you can do it for span-driven widgets as well, span-driven queries, I should say, because as we know, one widget can be driven by logs, metrics, and spans at the same time. So if we open up logs here, we can see we have a typical event table. There's not a lot going on, but down here we can see this query: JSON HTTP request UIP country name, and then the country name variable here. And if we open up this country name variable here, we can actually see the variable name country underscore name and all the different values that are in that drop down. So what I'm saying to the dashboarding solution is query by country name, unless it's all, in which case I'll pull everything. Now we can do the same thing in metrics. So I take the average load time by a given country. So country name is this, and I group it by countries, and that's why I've got all the countries down the side here. So what that means is when I select a specific country, let's say the UK, what I get are the metrics that pertain to that particular country and the log events that pertain to that particular country. This is to say that you can embed this variable into all of your widgets and turn your dashboard into a really nice interactive interface that can be filtered and viewed really, really easily and really cleanly, really effectively. So the idea here is just to show you the really simple definition of variables. And of course, variables can be updated as well. You just click on the actual label name as it's there. It will appear there. If you wish to delete it, you can delete it down there. So for example, with this one, we can also change how the values are going to appear, whether they're alphabetically in ascending order or descending order. If I click delete there, the variable's gone. So variables are saved as part of the dashboard, so really, really powerful and really easy to work with. This will mean that if you have very complex, high cardinality metrics, you can add these variables to zoom in on the specific values you care about, and you can do that across all of your widgets, logs, metrics, and traces, doesn't matter. So this is just a really simple run through of variables, but they're immensely powerful. Most great quality dashboards have them because they enable you to get detailed without having to leave the page. So I would strongly recommend putting some variables in for the typical things that your users search your dashboard on. So let's go over some troubleshooting scenarios in the custom dashboarding solution in Coralogix. The first one, and the most common one that we see, is issues like this. So you can see here that I've queried the last 30 days of data for this particular dashboard, and 2 lines have appeared in the dashboard, okay, and the data ends at one of them. The first line here indicates that there's 7 days are available as per my retention policy, and the second indicates that there are 8 days available in a given query time range. Now, these are 2 limits that exist, okay. Normally, customers will retain for longer than 7 days, so you would expect the actual data retention line to be further back, but in this particular case, it's just 7 days. Now, what that means is that the range of your query for this first one can be up to 8 days worth of data at any one time. This matches how almost all of our users use these dashboards as operational and real-time reporting rather than any kind of long-term historical analysis, although that is possible. You'll see that in a moment. And the second thing you'll see here is the retention period. So this account is configured for 7 days retention period for high performance logs. And that's where the data kind of drops off here. And you'll see here that it completely stops at the 8-day range because we cease querying any further data past the 8-day range. So those are the 2 limits there. Now, what you can do actually, which is really interesting, and you saw this in the previous part of the video, but I'll just show you again, is if you change this to load data from archive, what happens now is rather than loading from high performance, it loads from the archive. Now, if I pick, you see there's no data here, so there's no data at this point. I can pick this area here. Notice how everything else updates and there's no data matching your inventory. That's because the retention period has passed. This is before, this data is too old now, so it's been dropped out of high performance storage. This hasn't updated, so we click on here, click refresh data. What will happen is it will actually go to the archive, which is the cloud storage held in your account, query the data and load it. And this is a really nice way of getting past that retention period, because if you're making good use of your archive, there you go, this data is now available. So again, notice how everything reading from high performance storage says no data. This is reading from the archive, and so it has all the data available. This is a really nice way of just beating one of those lines. But if you see those lines, that's what they mean. So really simple, really straightforward gray lines. The second thing to keep in mind is permissions. So dashboards aren't broken down by within teams. Your entire team can see all of your dashboards. However, it's only those users with write access that will be able to actually change them. So what we recommend is that you make all your dashboards as visible as possible, of course. But yeah, of course, just be aware of that people with write access to the rest of the platform can also change these dashboards. So if you have users that maybe not familiar with this and you don't want them to break anything, consider doing some permission splitting there to make sure that the right people have the right access and maintain the principle of least privilege when you're building these kinds of permission sets for your dashboards. Dashboards have a number of different amazing features, but of course, dashboarding can be tricky at times. So have a view through this video, develop your understanding of the different features, make use of all of the different features that are available as well, because it's really important that the best dashboards, they have abilities to filter by variables, define filters on the left hand side. They have all the visualizations they need in order to make a really nice, really clean sort of user experience. So you can see sort of these kinds of dashboards, really rich, full of information, and they contain all the information they need, including these things that people often forget, like the Markdown widgets and things that just give a bit of an insight into what's going on. So the custom dashboarding solution is really powerful, and I hope this video tutorial will help you deepen your understanding and really get the most possible value out of your custom dashboarding solution in your Coralogix account. I'm really excited to see how the feature is used, and how it becomes a sort of staple part of the Coralogix feature set. So enjoy, and hopefully you found this video useful today.